Okay, so I don't know what order these things are going to go up. I know that right now, the only thing that I have uploaded is sort of my decision to vote Biden, my thoughts behind that, and the sort of reasoning, like, behind that, like, sort of talking about the developments that have happened since the summer. The thing that I just listened back to, that I just finished, like, recording, was sort of talking about what happens in the very short term. So Trump is doing a fascist coup. That's happening. Don't want to get too far into that because I already talked about it. And I think it's very important to pay attention to how the Biden campaign handles this, and how well Trump can convince people that counting votes is somehow anti-democratic. Okay, so now the smoke has kind of cleared. Not really, but like the election process, like the process of putting in our votes, whatever, is over. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet, so we're not like in the fucking streets right now. That means that we kind of have a second to sit back and talk about what happened. And I'm pretty pissed at the Democrats. So this is not a very simple Bernie would have won analysis, and this is not as simple as like whatever. I don't regret voting for Biden. I think that was the right thing to do given my location and given I guess the developments since the summer. I hope he wins. That being said, my God, this election should have been a fucking layup for anybody. The Democrats should have been able to run a fucking like roll of toilet paper against Donald Trump, and it should have won. There are over 200,000 Americans dead. There hasn't been a stimulus check in months. Unemployment expansion has run out. There are no negotiations going on for a stimulus deal. The issues brought out by the George Floyd extrajudicial execution, and the movements that surrounded that have still not been completely addressed, especially on a national level. And Trump's answer to this and his campaign rhetoric on this is that Biden is a closet Marxist socialist who is like puppeted by the organization, which doesn't exist, of Antifa, and that somehow Biden is in favor of like completely removing the police force, as if he's a police abolitionist when he's not even like for defunding it, let alone abolishing the police. So the Democrats are unbelievably incompetent. And I said at the end of my Vote Blue No Matter Who video in the summer, at the beginning of July, I said the party who responds to a Make America Great Again campaign with America is already great while people are like living paycheck to paycheck at best, and now when people are fucking dying to a pandemic, that party is the last fucking party I want to be like the last defense against fascism. That is not what I want. I want a party that is substantive. I want a party that recognizes the systemic issues that got us Trump, and that recognizes that no, America is not a great place to be, and that a lot of people have it very terribly, but it's not for the reasons that Trump has put out, and we definitely don't need to destroy what freedoms and whatever and what good things we have in the country under the guise of making things great. We need to expand the economic protections and rights of the working class. We need to give a voice to the working class through unions and through party organization, etc. I want a party like that. And the Democrats are never going to be that party. And it is an indictment of the Democrats that it was this close to begin with. Biden is going to win in terms of votes, and in terms of like even electoral votes. Biden's going to win. There's not much of a question about that. Whether or not he actually gets into the presidency and Trump actually leaves is a different question. But like Biden won, but he should have won in a fucking landslide. This should have been like over 400 electoral votes type deal. You know what I mean? And there is something to be said, of course, for the fact that like maybe 35% of the country is never going to leave Trump's side. That's fucking scary as hell. But also is the result of fascism and the result of a cult of personality and the result of like this sort of savior complex that a lot of fascist leaders kind of like brand themselves with. And so it's to be expected that there's going to be a segment of the population that's never going to leave Trump's side. But That's not the reason this is so close. Okay? Biden has about 50% of the vote right now. And that means that there were a lot of people who looked at the two candidates who were not diehard Trump supporters and were like, I'm just going to go with Trump. There were a lot of people who did that. And that means that not only should we be condemning the fascist right and the people who are so diehard Trump supporters, we should be condemning the Democrats. This is an indictment of the Democratic Party. Because when you have a current in the Democratic Party, the Bernie Sanders current, which at least begins to address some of these systemic issues that we're facing in this country that have led to the rise of Donald Trump and led to the sort of open fascism of the Republican Party, that current in the Democratic Party is completely suppressed. And party leaders like Barack Obama and Tom Perez and others worked very hard to suppress that movement, because the interests of the capitalist class and the interests of the donors of the Democratic Party were much more important to them than the effective strategy of combating Donald Trump. That is not somebody that I want to trust with stopping fascism. That is not the group of people that I think should serve as the last bastion of democracy in the face of authoritarian far-right ultranationalism. That's not what I want, and that's not smart. It doesn't make sense that in a crisis of capitalism, we are beholden to the capitalist interests as a defense against the right. Won't work. And I voted Biden because I think that mobilizing a force in a second Trump term to oppose fascism is a sort of too little too late thing. I don't think we would have the time, and we need to buy time. And I originally said, I don't know if I said this in my video, but I agreed with the sentiment that I am very scared that the left is just kind of gonna go to sleep under a Biden presidency, and we aren't going to get any of the mobilization done. But unfortunately, that's a risk that we had to take. That's a risk that I had to take with my vote, because the left has to, we're out of time. We would be out of time under a Trump presidency, like a second term. So, the what do we do from here question is probably something that I'm going to have to think on for a while, and something that I hope is answered by smarter minds than me in the leftist current of American thought. But what I know right now is that we need to build a fucking alternative, and I really hope that people like Bernie Sanders and AOC and whatever, all those people, I really hope that they know that. I really hope that they don't actually have hope for a Biden presidency, and that they don't plan to work with Biden. I hope that they just wanted to get Trump out really quickly and just kind of build a movement afterwards. And of course, I don't want to put my faith and whatever in Bernie Sanders. I've made videos on this too. I don't think he's a savior for the left or whatever. But I really hope that these popular leaders don't just kind of fall in line behind a Democratic administration. I really hope that with the time that is bought by a Biden inauguration, not election, a Biden inauguration. So that's already a big if. But if we get there, I hope that leaders like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are starting to think about building the infrastructure and helping us, the working class, build the infrastructure needed to have an actual popular workers' movement in the United States to oppose the fascist monster that is not going away with Trump. So it's an indictment. It's an indictment of the liberal system, which inevitably leads to this collapse of liberties in the face of economic inequality. I've probably said this before as well. If you attempt political freedom and democracy with economic inequality and capitalist barbarism, essentially, then the capitalist barbarism is going to win out eventually. And the inequality and opulence of the ruling class is going to supersede the freedoms that the working class was given in the liberal revolutions in the Enlightenment period. And that failure of liberalism is something that the left has kind of known about for a very long time, and something that I really hope we're able to mobilize against when it rears its ugly head in the very near future, if we even make it that long. So again, the future is bleak. If Biden gets into the White House, we have bought ourselves some time, and I hope that people don't go back to sleep, and I hope that there is an effective mobilization by people like the DSA and the PSL and others. And I guess we'll see. So I guess that's where I'm at with the analysis of the future. I'm sure I'll talk about this more as things develop. Thanks for listening.